All right. Hope everybody is having a wonderful week. This week is Independence Day. This is the time of the year. I think everybody in the on the planet has the right to believe that their country is the greatest country in the world. And I think there are very few things that are more exciting to me than being able to celebrate with explosions. I grew up with the Lethal Weapon movies, so if it didn't, and Michael Bay, if it didn't blow up, it wasn't worth watching. That's Frederick Douglass. Do you guys know anything about Douglass? Have you heard that name? He was an escaped slave that had the ear of Abraham Lincoln, an incredibly brilliant person. He was the most photographed celebrity in the 19th century. Like, everybody on the cover of People magazine all wrapped together in one. And he is also personally responsible for one of the fastest growing cottage industries in Michigan and other northern states, which is um, uh, basically small photo studios so that families could get their own photos taken. And that's really where that family portrait thing started, in big part because of him. And it was because he said that photography is an amazing tool. It is one of those things that allows you to demonstrate to the world and preserve for the world how you want the world to see you. And everyone now has access to portraiture, which used to belong only to kings and rulers. I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, I was thinking about that because you wrote an essay, What Means the 4th of July um, to the Black Man? And it's a really, it's something that's worth reading, but it's really hard to get through. It's like somebody peeling a scab off your back. Um, anyway, you guys doing anything for fun this weekend? We have family over, a barbecue. Paige says a barbecue. Excellent. I taught myself how to make charcuterie sushi, so I'm going to do that, where you use meats and mozzarella cheese instead of seaweed and rice to make sushi like that. So hopefully nobody throws up. We'll see. Well, I've been really impressed. A lot of people have sent a lot of very cool stuff in, and I have been grading throughout the weekend. I still have a couple assignments left to do, but we've got most of it done. And there's a couple things that are really we need to go over, finishing up for last week, and then also we need to talk about the Italian Renaissance this week. So it's going to be rough. It's going to be really fast. But there's a few things that I want, before we get into that, I want people to really be aware of. One is that my class is different than all the other classes you've taken at Utah Tech. Uh, Most of the time, when you take a class and you get a grade, that's it. Unless you go in and talk to the teacher specifically, and even then, most of the time, I mean, that's it. Your grade is done. Because we are doing this online and we cannot speak to each other in person, that means that I have to be flexible and you need to take advantage of that flexibility. We don't have a live class, so you can't ask questions while you're working on an assignment. Um, and so instead of that, when I grade, if you don't get the grade that you want, and you should always want a perfect score, that's what you should be going for. If you do not get a perfect score, read the notes that I've made. And if you don't understand them, ask me about them, rework your stuff, and resubmit. You can resubmit over and over again up until the very end of the semester. And that one of the things that I'm noticing is that like 3/4 of everybody are really nailing the assignments, but that last quarter, sometimes they read through it too fast. They didn't see everything they were supposed to. They forgot about something, and that or they submitted the wrong assignment to the wrong portal. And when that happens, or even some people are still submitting the HEIC files, which my computer can't read. That's in the syllabus not to do that. All you have to do is look at what I've written, make the changes you need to, and resubmit. And then you get a better grade. One thing that I am noticing is that a lot of you are taking advantage of that. The reason why I do that is I want you to take advantage of that. There's no reason not to get a perfect score in this class when you can retake all the quizzes and you can redo all the assignments if you need to get to that perfect score. All right, so please take advantage of that. And there are some things like one of the things that I've noticed on the, and we'll go over it in just a little bit, on the citations for artists is that either people forgot about the paragraph and what they were supposed to put in that, or they forgot about making sure that all the sites that they found were for the same artist that they had picked in module 3. And if you did either one of those things, I put a note there, not a big deal, just fix it and resubmit. There's a couple people in this class who get excited about the weekly reflections. They do it and turn it in, but it's not necessarily about everything that we talked about. And these people I'm really grateful for because you sometimes within 10 minutes after I make my note saying, oh, this you need to have these and this, you need to have these things in it, they will turn around and resubmit a reflection that covers everything they need to. And that shows me a couple things. Shows me that you're really interested in doing a good job in the class, and it also shows me you're really paying attention to what we talk about in the class. And I that is absolutely wonderful. So again, everything can be worked on, everything can be resubmitted, all the quizzes can be retaken. Now, on the other side of that, though, is if you have submitted something or resubmitted something, and I sometimes I will be grading at 2:30 in the morning, which is probably a really bad idea because sometimes I'll be grading all the assignments for or all the submissions for one assignment, then I'll switch to the next assignment and start grading, but in my mind I'm still grading according to that earlier assignment, which means that nobody's getting good grades. And usually by the time I get to the fourth or fifth person, I think, oh, wait a sec, and then I'll go back and rework it and fix it. If I don't do that, it's important for you to make sure and double check that I'm grading stuff and that you're getting the points that you really need to be getting. And if you turn something in and I didn't grade it correctly, let me know. If you turn something in, I graded it, then you resubmitted it, and I still haven't gotten to it, let me know. And what I've been grateful for is this week alone, I think about 7 or 8 people have emailed me to double check on stuff, make sure that I saw that they had resubmitted and things like that, and that's great. Now, if it just doesn't make sense what I'm saying and you can't make sense of the assignment, email me or text me, and people in this class have done both of that, and I am more than happy to set up a Teams meeting with you so we can talk through the assignment and clarify things. I'm happy to do that. Again, since we're not meeting face to face, I I don't want you to feel weird about that. I think that's something that you should take advantage of because we're not meeting face to face and you can't talk to me while the rest of the people are leaving the classroom. So just uh, email me or text me. About a year and a half ago, I had a student, we were doing class projects for another class I teach, and this person, they didn't follow any of the description or any of the parameters for the assignment. They just sent me a couple of pictures. I had no idea what they were doing. they got a terrible score. So I told them what they needed. They came back, did something a little bit better. It still was way off. And we talked back and forth, and they resubmitted about 6 or 7 times. And by the time they were done, they had a perfect score on it. And so I want you guys to take advantage of that. All right. So, anybody have any questions before we dive into stuff this week? Okay. All right. I'm going to do a screen share here. And hi, Jeremy. I saw that you came in. Excellent. Okay. It only takes me a short half an hour to set up the screen share. All right, here we go. Okay, now we talked quite a bit about this. Um, we talked about the world tour where we looked at some of the different artists, and I'm just going to touch on that really briefly. Um, we talked about Kente Cloth, and this is like the heraldry of Ghana because the colors and the patterns say an awful lot. And we have one of the master weavers right here, Kwasi Asare, who talks about the work that they do. And you can actually find some of his videos too, where he talks about it. We talked a little bit about ceramics, ceramic tradition, and we're talking about Ghana, and it's what we're mostly talking about is this part of Africa right here. Um, this area right here, this little red dot is Ghana, and this area around Ghana are areas that are pretty heavily influenced by the seven Yoruba kingdoms, and it's a pretty consistent culture. There are some variances in visual language, but it is a pretty consistent culture that spans or that influences heavily many of these countries through here. Here's Mali, one of my favorite countries, because we talked about Sundiata. And Sundiata was the one who liberated an area of Africa, if you can believe. Look at how, where North America fits. North America fits into, well, it actually fits into here because everything's distorted. And China fits into this part right up here. I mean, Africa is gigantic. This is distorted. It actually is, Africa is quite a bit bigger than it shows in this map. But anyway, if you can imagine Sundiata about 700 years ago liberating a path of group of an area of Africa almost this big. So almost the size of the United States is how many people he influenced. And a lot of the Yoruba kingdom culture is right through here. And that's why we're kind of focusing on that area because it's pretty unified. I'm sorry, it's not pretty unified. The visual culture has a lot of the same inspirations. And we talked about Lady Kwali and her work with ceramics, the Ile uh, bronze work, and Ella Anatsui, which I hope you guys remember is one of my favorite artists ever. Okay, so we talked about that, blah, blah, blah. And then we talked a little bit about um, Kente Cloth and people in Congress trying to show solidarity by wearing the Kente stoles. And anytime anybody does anything like this, there are going to be people that scream loudly for and against it. And what I wanted you to do is just be thinking a little bit about what does cultural appropriation mean? And I think even though the words may sound really similar, there is a difference between cultural adoption and integration and the idea of cultural appropriation. And that's something that I wanted you to think about. Visit 3 different sites, learn a little bit about it, then write and just a couple of paragraphs where you talk your thoughts about it. And pretty much everybody who's done this has done a really good job. I'm very impressed. I haven't told you guys this, but I've been at Utah Tech. There is a thing for a lot of faculty where we are specifically trained to learn how to adapt portions of our class to prepare people coming through our class for the future workforce. And a big part of that is critical thinking. That's why we use the Feldman model of critique, and that's why I have you do the reflections and things like this, where you're using critical thinking. And one of the reasons why is I found out in these classes at Utah Tech that even though, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, about 54% of students graduating and getting jobs tell their employers and tell the people that are interviewing them, I am really well versed in critical thinking. I understand the processes and all that kind of stuff. Employers are telling headhunters and employment groups that the reality is, I'm sorry, no, I got the number switched. Over 90%, it's about 94% of freshly graduated students going into the workforce are telling their employers, I know all about critical thinking, I'm an expert critical thinker, all that kind of stuff. The employers are saying that about 54% of the students who claim that actually understand what critical thinking is. And I think a big part of that is just in our vocabulary, we get the words mixed up. When you hear things like critical and critique, it's it almost always has a negative connotation. And critical is supposed to be a synonym for intentful or on purpose. It should not be a synonym for, okay, I've got something that's going to hurt your feelings now. And that's which is sad. So when we talk about critical thinking, the word they use in the business world is critical thinking, but I want you guys to be thinking about thinking with intention. That's the kind of thing we're doing. So we're thinking with purpose and intention. So that's one of the reasons why when you write, you should be writing with an outline to get your thoughts in order. You should be, and we talk about precision in language and things like that. All those things are important as you move forward with um, communication. And the Feldman's model of artistic critique we talked about is describing, analyzing, describing, what does it look like? How is it made? Or how does it appear to you? Analyze, how was it made? Interpret, what could it possibly mean? And finally, evaluate, was it successful? And if you are able to articulate with precision all those elements as you look at a piece of art or anything else you encounter, it is astonishing how well and thoroughly you can communicate. Because when you do that, it doesn't matter to me whether or not I agree with you at all. At least I understand why you're thinking the way you are. And then we have something to talk about. If you just say, I don't like it, I mean, that doesn't give us anything. But if you say, oh, it's pretty, I mean, that doesn't do any good either. Okay, so I want to talk about this. This is where we apply the critical thinking. We talked about Sundiata and Mali, the griots, you know, the Mali, the Yoruba kingdom influenced cultures that Mali was a part of, um, relied heavily on spoken literature. Literature is almost entirely and exclusively thought of as something that's written down. That's what we talked about that earlier when we were talking about history and prehistory. But the verbal literature is something where people are so precise in their memory that they can remember subclauses of contracts 20 years after the contract was first spoken. And this becomes important because I think I told you a couple weeks ago, some of the oldest verbal histories on the planet are among the indigenous peoples in Australia, where they have verbal histories uh, describing astronomical events that happened 50,000 years ago. I mean, and these guys, these griots in Mali at the time of Sundiata were, and even still today, hundreds and hundreds of years later, they will remember the equivalent of hundreds of novels. This is the kind of stuff that the Greek uh, uh, performers like Homer. they knew how to do. What makes Homer special is that all the stories that he told were stories that people had memorized and told verbally for many, many years. And what makes Homer special is he actually wrote it down, the Iliad and the Odyssey, so it became written literature as well. Anyway, so we talked about that, and we talked about um, Sundiata, who didn't take a step before he was 12 years old. And there's actually a lot of movies and stuff that you can find online about him. There's some really good cartoons, and I have some links that I would like you to look at that talk a little bit about his history. And this is just a blow up of one part that he had a lot of sway on. Now he governed the Mali Empire, which is this area right here, but he liberated, traded, and heavily influenced people all the way across the continent. And just a very impressive character who brought freedom of religion and written literacy to thousands and thousands and thousands of people and provided an environment where they were supported in self-governance. So, and which is pretty amazing. Um, that wasn't really even in a lot of people's consciousness um, until about 300 years ago. Anyway, and then we talked about the art, and I was really impressed. A lot of you guys did a terrific job on the equestrian figures, where I asked you to apply Feldman's model of artistic critique to this. I was really impressed with what you guys did. You guys, you remember all these? Many of you did that, and you did a wonderful job. So you guys are ready for the next step, and the next step is what you are going to be doing at the end of the term. So in about 3 or 4 weeks, what we're going to be doing is I want you to be looking at this stuff from a critical perspective. So, go through these websites, look at the art of ancient Mali, the architecture and things like that, because what you're going to be doing is pretending that you lived 700 years ago in the kingdom of Mali. There's something that you think should exist at that time, and you're going to be thinking, what can I do to make it look like it was made by Sundiata or the people that were alive at his time so that it looks consistent with the art and architecture of this time period. Now, how does that exercise critical thinking? Well, you're developing a vocabulary for what you see. What is consistent with all these equestrian rider figures? What's consistent with pottery from the area and the figurative sculpture from the area? What's consistent with the architecture? And I want you to be thinking about that in the back of your head, because what you're ultimately going to be doing is looking online, finding historic visual images of those things that so that they demonstrate the the uniting characteristics that you are seeing, and then you're going to be asking AI to use those characteristics that you are pointing out to develop something that did not exist at the time but should have. And for this particular exercise, what you're doing is brainstorming, and I believe we do have some examples of that I want to go through. And what you're going to be So you're going to be brainstorming about what you can do and thinking about what can I, how, what kinds of things am I noticing that would make this maybe fit visually into the Mali world of 700 years ago. So go through this, read through it, and when you submit, you're going to be submitting your notes and photos of the sketches you make, if you're making sketches, and a type description of what you want to build, at least 75 words. And this could be like maybe my notes are I was looking at a bunch of stuff, the equestrian riders. I really liked to see a lot of the decorative work around the bridles and what the people were wearing. And I thought, what if I brought that to a cell phone cover? And so I'm just going to sketch out just a rectangle, and this is what the cell phone cover might look like a little bit, and then describe it. and that's what you turn in. Now, let's see if we can find some examples of this. And I will set these up so that, and show them to you. Okay, so this is somebody, they thought, okay, here's a list of things that maybe I can do. This is part of their brainstorming process. Phone charger, phone case, bedspread, jewelry, water bottle, sneakers. I'm thinking they highlight a water bottle because maybe it looks like that's what they're going to be going towards. If the Mali Empire designed it, it would be out of carved wood, fun colors, cool designs. I like this. This person is really doing a good job thinking through design. I see lots of color and cool carvings. So they looked at images of Mali artwork, analyzed the earth tones and gold colors are used, patterns are used. These are the things that they use to make the designs, and, and possible interpretation and evaluation. This is great. Um, this person did a terrific job with this brainstorming. And then this is the paragraph that they wrote. So this is an excellent example. Oh no, they didn't put a sketch in there. Well, if you guys, if you're not, if you don't not confident with the way you draw and things like that, just describe it. Don't worry about making a sketch. Now, one thing that I want you to notice is that um, none of these things that we're going to be looking at should have AI. You're not using AI now. All you're doing is brainstorming and talking about it. And so that first example is really, really good. And I think we have a couple others to look at. Okay, so I'm going to share this. All right, research notes. So they did a lot of exploration, and these are the things that they're noticing. Building, what the buildings are made of, geometric shapes. They talk about some of the symbolic or the patterns and things like that. Gold, the importance of gold. This is really good. Architecture combines beauty and practical use. These are some really good notes that the person is making. And then, oh, so this is some of their brainstorm ideas. They use describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. Excellent. They're doing that really good. Notice they're not writing long paragraphs. The first person and this person both are writing one sentence for each of those describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. It's just to organize ideas. Oh, and they did do a sketch. This is excellent. And then they're talking about what a basketball court might look like. So this is excellent. Okay, and I am going to the next one to show you. I this is making me happy because it looks like people are really paying attention to what we talked about. And this person even did some drawings, sketches also, and showed some of the things. So they're not all they aren't doing the same layout as the other people that we looked at, but they're covering a lot of the same ground. And this is looking really good to me because they're focusing on different things. They're talking about how stuff was made. So they are still very aware of those four tools of artistic critique, even though they didn't organize things under those headings. And then they're talking about how these takeout things might look, how they might be designed. This is great. This is excellent. So we're not making anything yet. All we're doing is just talking about it, thinking about it, brainstorming, and then recording notes. And if you sketch, recording, sharing the sketch that you made or sketches. And I used to not do this step, but I found that it was really overwhelming for a lot of people to just be dumped in the deep end, basically, and being told, by the way, today you've got to get this turned in. If we took a moment and brainstormed about it, then you guys had a while a couple of weeks to think about it after brainstorming it. And then you could plug it into AI and be really aware of what AI was doing, what to tell AI, and then also how to evaluate what AI came out and tell it what to change. Okay, so again, another really good example. And this person, their notes, they wrote them out so that they're lot easier to understand. Well, this is then they say, I want to combine a modern item with artistic traditions of the Mali Empire to see how ancient design can still inspire today. This is great. And so they did some sketches and everything. And they talk about, they're pointing out some of the references, the Great Mosque of Jenne, Mali textiles, and Kente cloth designs. This is excellent. So the people that have done this, everybody who's turned this in so far has done an excellent job at doing the brainstorming and writing the brainstorming down. And I want you to notice too that no two people did exactly the same thing. Each one was a little bit unique. And that's exactly what I hope for. So before we go on, is this assignment kind of making sense to people doing the brainstorming and stuff? Okay. All right, excellent. Okay, now I want to go the next thing that needs to be turned in this week is the Kente cloth design, where you're making your own Kente cloth as essentially. And we have some really good submissions. We have some submissions to show as well. And what you're going to be doing is making a grid on 8 by 10, an 8 by 10 grid. So you're going to be using a ruler to make the grid, where you're basically making 20 squares that are 2 inches by 2 inches. And here is a video link for you. And I'll show you what this video looks like really quick in just a second. Oh, okay, here we go. I'm sighing because I'm trying to save you from all the YouTube ads. Okay, so this person shows you how to draw a 4 by 5 square grid that's 2 inches, where all the squares are 2 inches. And I want you to look at it. It's about a 2 minute video, and they're making the marks, they're measuring, and then they're drawing everything so you can make the grid really pretty precise. So can you see that grid being drawn there on that paper? Let's see if I can get something that is right. You see, here's the marks that they're making. Now, this person did it on 8 by 10 paper. If you use 8.5 by 11 paper, it's a little bit easier because you have something of a border to work with. But the reason we're doing that is for the Kente cloth design, what you're going to be doing is coming up with 3 different designs, repeating those 3 different designs in a pattern into that grid. So some of them you may have 5 or 6, some of them you may have 6 or 7 repeats, and that's fine. And then you're using that to make an overall design with the colors that you pick. Each of these means something different. You don't have to be an expert on what they mean, but I want you to be aware that they do mean things that are different. So let's see, I'm going to show you some examples of this, what people have done. And before I share it with you, I'm going to go to one that somebody turned in so you can actually have something to look at. Okay, now this person, um, they did the grid underneath, and you can't see that because they colored over it. But you can see that they have done the pattern is a pretty consistent step pattern, mastaba type pattern, and they used four different colors, repeating it over and over again. So even though they used the same pattern, they used, well, mostly the same pattern. They did do some variations, like right through here, and they used color in some interesting ways. And then they also, when they submitted this, they also wrote why they chose that pattern and why they picked those colors, what those colors mean. Now, one of the things that I think is really interesting is every culture, I mean, all of us use very similar colors because our eyes see the same kind of spectra. But what is interesting to me is that colors across cultures are going to be a little bit different. And so the meanings of the colors are, excuse me, are going to be a little bit different. And so that's one of the reasons why I want you guys to be aware of this. Now, this person used white as a background. I think these are a lot more dramatic when you fill in the white, so you don't have that. But I don't think I said don't hide the white of the paper. But you can see they did a really good job with the grid. So there's four across and five down. That gives you 20 squares that are each 2 inches by 2 inches. The reason this impresses me, and I hope all of you feel that this is a sad thing to be impressed by, is whenever people draw grids to the specs that I give in an assignment, it makes me happy because that means they read the directions. And it what is fascinating to me is it's usually like Art 1010, classes like that, that people pay really close attention to the directions. And it's like the 400 level classes that people start getting confused, which I think is funny. But this person did research and they created these designs to use, and they have notes about what the different things mean. And I think that that's really very cool. So this is another really good example of how this is done. And then I want to, and then there's one more I want to share with you. We'll get to it. Over the years, I found that one of the things that can be confusing to people, and this is they don't really understand um, they don't really understand all the aspects of the assignment. And in this assignment, what you're going to be doing well, I'll just show this to you. In this assignment, what you're going to be doing is both coming up with these designs and then repeating them on the grid. So this person has three different designs, which is exactly right. They repeated it on a grid, but this person did a little bit too much work because they only needed to go four across and five down. And we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that all they had to do was this part right here. But they did a lot of extra work. And you don't need to do that. But I say that on one hand, but on the other hand, this turned out looking freakishly cool. I mean, this is excellent. And there's the material that they're writing out. They talked about the different colors and stuff, and you can use them. This person chose these colors because they have meaning to them, or you could do research and find out what the colors mean for the Ghanaians that make this. Either way, um, I think either way it works. And the reason why I think that is because honestly, nobody in the class, I believe, this semester is Ghanaian. And so since we're adapting this historical thing and making it our own, then we can use the elements that are more unique to our own cultural perspectives, and that's just fine. Oh, sorry. There we go. So this turned out really, really well. Now, does anybody have any questions about this assignment? Going through it like that, does that help everybody to kind of get what's going on? Okay, excellent. And if you do this, there I've had some people that struggled with this, and I think it was last year somebody did those three designs, but they did the three designs on, large pieces of paper. They did not put it onto a grid. And so we talked about the grid. They realized, oh yeah, that's what I needed to do, and went back and did that part of it. But I I'm finding that if we talk about these things a little bit, people are yeah, everybody having the chance to ask the questions and stuff like that. It's really helping for people to understand what's going on. One thing we did not do is we did not talk about some of the we didn't look at examples of the cave art designs that people had done. And I wanted to see if I could find one of those and just show you guys what people had done with drawing with paint. So I'm gonna share a couple of these with you. And we're just gonna do this really, really quickly. Was a line, and the line, they just repeated the line over and over again with each of those colors that we talked about. And I thought that was kind of a fun way to do this. And I wanted to find one other one and share with you. And I found that the most common issue for this, for people not getting full points, was they would do one painting and stop. And for this one, you needed to do 5 paintings to get the full points and submit all 5. And I think that it looks to me like everybody's understanding now that you've got to submit everything, all your files at the same time to one assignment. Otherwise, Canvas keeps writing over. Oh, and here's another one that I really like. And the images that came through on this were really, really, really big. So all you can see is just a little part of it, but I really like this. I mean, this one was very cool. A very simple design, it's just a squiggly line, but I want you to look. This person used several different colors. I can, let's see, there's yellow, brown, black, and red, and they did the squiggly lines in one direction and then squiggly lines in another direction, and it just made it very cool. I that This one I thought was really nice, and there were several good examples that people had done. And I also want to share um, some of the results of the studio painting that we were doing last week, the 2 colors. And these were really beautiful. I think the only problem that I saw with these is that not everybody it didn't look like everybody used um, uh, landscape images for their inspiration. So I thought this was really great. It looks like to me they used watercolor and lots of different values, nicely done. Blue and green, orange and green, mixing it a little bit. I thought that looked really good. And I think I'm just going to share maybe one or two others. I'm sorry, for whatever reason, my internet is taking a long time to load right now, just at this second, so I'm not able to show everything. Okay, here's another one. This one I thought was another one that turned out really nice. And I'm not looking for photographic accuracy. What I'm looking for is somebody who's paying attention to what we're doing. working with different values and stuff like that. And I thought this one I thought I really liked too because person used watercolor and they just did some fun stuff right here. Not necessary to the assignment, but it looks really cool. This texture right here, stuff like that I think is really fun. So I'm gonna find one more to share with you, and then we'll go on to Italy. Again, I'm apologizing for how long it's taking my internet to load. All right, here's one more to show you. And there were some really, really good ones that people did. I mean, I'd say there were all of them were really nice. All of them were really cool. And I just some of them were fun, and then some of them were a lot of fun. And this kind of thing is just it is exciting to me to see when you guys are playing around with colors and just exploring that. So um, there were a couple where it didn't look like it looked to me like they were just doing patterns that weren't inspired by landscapes. And for those people, I made a note. If I'm wrong, please let me know because it looked like they weren't landscapes. And if whoever's watching this, if you didn't get all the points you wanted, look at the notes and see what I said. So I think those turned out really good. And I wanted to show just one example of the artist research element that we're doing. Many people did this. They did it really good, and this is an example of one of the good ones, which is almost everybody's. So what this person did, Dohosa was the artist that they picked in module 3 a couple weeks ago, and then they found 5 different citations, and these are the actual URLs, which is exactly right. And then they talked about the 2 different search engines that they used, how they were looking for stuff, and then about the time it took. And this is exactly right. Their paragraph, I think, is about 4 sentences long. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences long. This is great, not super long. The whole thing took them 28 minutes to do, 5 different citations. Now, the people that miss points, the reasons they miss points, the 2 most common reasons are first, either the paragraph was missing or they didn't get all those elements where you have to talk about the 2 search engines you used, and how you evaluated the search, and um, they talked a little bit about that, and then how long it took. Those 3 things need to be in there. So either people forgot or didn't cover everything in the paragraph. The other thing that people forget to do is they'll do 5 different sites that are just different art sites. They aren't focused on 5 different sites on the one artist that they picked in module 3. Now, every once in a while, you'll pick an artist in module 3 and you won't be able to find a lot of stuff on them. If that's the case, put an extra note right here that says I had to switch to a different artist because I couldn't find a lot of stuff. And that's fine. You add that to the paragraph. But these 5 different URLs must be all on the same artist. And here we have a biography. We have uh, a magazine that talks about uh, Tate Modern exhibit. We have the thing that the Tate actually wrote about them themselves. Art21 is a website that does a lot of stuff where they talk about and interview different artists, and then a YouTube video where people are exploring what the artist did. And this is an excellent, excellent um, array of different kinds of research or different sources for the research. So that was really, really well done. All right. So with all that, what we are going to do now is talk about, we have about 40 minutes that we're going to be talking about Italy. So, is everybody still awake? Everybody still with me? All right. Paige, Nicole, and Jeremy, are you three
Yes,
still
sir.
awake? Okay, Pages. Jeremy, you're still
Yes,
here?
sir.
All right, excellent.
I'm here.
Excellent. I gotta tell you guys, my older brother is having a really difficult time right now. He spends thousands of dollars every year. I don't know, it looks like thousands of dollars. I hope it's not, on fireworks for his neighborhood. And they have a huge party. He loves that. I grew up with several brothers. Um I have three biological brothers. I have three adopted Navajo brothers, and my mom had to be a licensed pyrotechnician. She was legally licensed to blow stuff up just because she needed to be able to validate to all, the police and firemen that came up to our house every week that everything was under control. So we love explosions in our family. And with all um, the firefighting and stuff going on in Utah right now, St. George has put a ban on neighborhood fireworks. And I just think that that's really, on one hand that's really sad, but on the other hand, my grandpa fought fires. I think I've told you guys about this a little bit. He worked with the 555th, who fought fires in the Northwest during World War II, and I just I my heart goes out to all the firefighters in Utah and Colorado right now, especially the ones caught on the Colorado border that lost their lives doing this. So I hope it rains more. Um, and those guys, I hope they're able to get the fires um, under control. But my brother's conflicted because he loves the fireworks, but he also totally supports the firefighters that are doing their best. We don't want to contribute to make their job harder. So, something to keep in mind. Anyway, watching some of the Autobot movies just so I can get my explosion fix in. Okay. All right, I'm setting this up to share the screen. The Italian Renaissance. Now, one of the things that we know about the Renaissance is this is where, oh, it looks like, okay. I'll have to see if I can find a better image, or find an image that we can actually find for you guys, so that you can see what's supposed to be there. But what is significant about the Renaissance is this is where people really start doing artwork that we relate most closely to today, where things are consistently appearing as what we would recognize as naturalistic or realistic. And one of the problems that I have is that a lot of um, art historians will say that this is the first time that realism shows up, and it's not. And I'm so glad Utah Tech, that the art historians here recognize, they know that. But I have worked with other art historians in the past where they didn't they didn't believe that people before the Renaissance did realistic things. And but we see evidence of that all the time, especially um, Roman ivory plaques and early European ivory plaque work. You can see people doing incredibly naturalistic carvings 1,000 years before the Renaissance. Or even when we did the tour of Africa, those bronze heads, they look like they belong to the Renaissance, but they were done 1,500 years earlier. So, and this is where we're talking about. This is where that the Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance really started. And you notice this is in Italy. The reason why this is important is because north of this are the Alps and the rest of Europe, and all around this is the Mediterranean. This whole area is where people would funnel through and engage with North Africa, the Eastern Mediterranean, the Middle East, the spice road to China. A lot of that trade comes through Italy in this area. And I'll give you a little bit of background of the Renaissance that we're going into. This really picked up about 1350. And this is at the tail end of the Crusades. And the Crusades, depending on who you talk to, there were between 6 and 12 of them, and they were all based on the idea that different people wanted different control of different lands in North Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean shore, uh, the the Holy Lands, Jerusalem, those kinds of areas. And what happened after almost 300 years of intermittent warfare is that as people are coming back to Italy, back to Europe, back to North Africa, settling down again, they realized that they could make a lot more money trading with other people, finding exotic things and bringing them to different people who didn't have access to them before than they would if they just stayed fighting. And the other aspect I think is really fascinating is that folks in Italy and the rest of Europe, as well as folks in North Africa, as well as folks in the Eastern Mediterranean and particularly Turkey, they found out that the world was massively larger and massively more diverse than they had ever expected or thought before. Up until in Europe itself, up until the Crusades, most people, and by most I mean about 98% of all Europeans, lived and died within 12 miles of where they were born. And over that 300 years of the Crusades, you get people traveling thousands of miles and returning home. I think this is one of the reasons why architecture exploded, the arts exploded, food technologies exploded, because people realized so many things were possible that they had never even thought of before. And I want you to watch this video. I don't remember how long it is. I think it's about 5 minutes or so, but it talks about Renaissance architecture in Italy, in Florence, Italy. So I want to show you what things look like artistically for the most part before the Renaissance and after. And I believe that you may have a hard time accessing the rest of the module until you do this first assignment, until you look at this first. So this image here is what art looked like, particularly Christian art, right before the Renaissance got picked up. It is heavily influenced by Christian artists in Turkey coming into Italy. It's heavily influenced by uh, uh, perceptions of what the world is shaped like from a theological point of view. That term is called cosmology. And some of the things that we can see about it that I want you to look at is you notice these figures, there is a little bit of a sense of depth, but the depth is very much an illusion. If Mary were to stand up, her thighs, you look from the knee to her hip, would it be about a third of the length they should be, because the depth, the illusion of depth, is not a priority for this artist. What are some of the things that you think are the priorities for this artist? And this is pretty consistent with uh, art from about Christian art from about the 7th century to about the beginning of the 14th century. Some of the things that are really important is they wanted to communicate a hierarchy of importance in the social structure. So that's why Mary is the biggest. And this is baby Jesus sitting on her lap. So he's smaller because he's a baby. But then notice that the angels are around them. They're subordinate. Mary at this time is still considered in the Catholic Church to be the Empress of Heaven. She is the mother of God and is the only person born without original sin who is fully mortal. So she is a product of an immaculate conception. So she is a miracle baby herself, and then she gives birth to this miracle who is Jesus. Some of the other things that are important is this is architecture, but it's not intended to look like it's realistic. They wanted to just communicate the idea that this is architecture. And then you have these are the four uh, gospel writers: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each of them have a very different physical trait, and they wear different clothes that are consistent across the spectrum. Every time you see an image of Luke uh, from Eastern Turkey all the way to Spain. He's going to be wearing the same clothes and his facial features are going to be about the same. So it's not important that these are specifically realistic. It's important that they give you a story. And one of the things you'll notice too is every time Jesus has a halo, almost every time, there's this little cross behind his head too. And you can kind of see that. And here's the Renaissance. There are a couple of things that are immediately different. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why is the invention of, uh, or I'm sorry, the use of a much more expanded spectrum of color. Because of all the trade, people have access to a lot more different colors. And although this is, okay, the media, I'm sorry, this is a caption for this one. It's tempera, which is very fast drying. That's one of the reasons why these figures look the way they do, because the medium was hard to work with. This one is done with oil paint, which takes a lot longer to dry, and that's one of the reasons why you get so much more shading. This, on this one, we can see that the human figures are a lot more realistically proportioned than this. And because this is intended to tell a story. This is intended to remind you that human beings are the greatest creation. And so it is important to the story that you remember that you are important. And part of communicating that you are important is the fact that the human form is celebrated and much more naturalistic. So those are just a couple of the differences that we can see right away. So for that, in order to move on, what you'll need to do is just up a couple of the things that you notice in between some of the differences between pre-Renaissance and during the Renaissance. And I know I went over that really fast. Did you guys see some of the things I was pointing out? Like before the Renaissance, the figures are a lot more uncomfortable looking. Fewer colors are used. There's not a lot of shading. You can recognize the forms, but the naturalism is a lot less important than that you understand what the story is. Do you guys understand get that? And then with the Renaissance, we have a change in technology. They can make paint take a lot more time to dry, so you can do a lot more shading. They have access to a lot more colors, and there's a certain amount of celebration of the human form to remind you that human beings are the most important creation. And so that's why things are more naturalistic. So does that make sense? And there's other things that are going on, but I want you to think about just some of the differences that you see. Now, with all this technology and all this communication coming back to Italy, one of the things that we see is people have a lot more access to possibilities that they didn't have in other spaces. There's a lot more money. So artists have access to a lot more technology and resources because there's more money for them to use. You know, looking in this, just looking at that early painting, we only saw three different colors. Right here, you can see all sorts of different shades. And there's different technologies that are used. Like this blue right here is used with lapis from Afghanistan. And this blue is an oxidized copper. So there's lots of different that come from different parts of the world. And you can kind of see that here too. The reds are different because they have access to different sources for the different red pigments. And here, because there's a lot more money involved, they can commission paintings where it's important that the family that commissioned the paintings wants everybody to know that they're the ones that commissioned the painting. So it's a lot more important for artists to get faces specific. So that, because sometimes they'll do historical imagery where the individuals in the historic image are the models are actually the families that commissioned the paintings. So which is something that people didn't do an awful lot before now. And then what you look at this kind of architecture, this is very specific to the Renaissance. You get these kinds of paneling going on, and it's not really a way of showing off per se, but it's a way of showing that the designers and stuff are um, really know their stuff. It's they are they're not being ostentatious about it, but they are kind of showing off that they know what they're doing. Because when you use different materials, they will respond to weather in different ways. And if you want the entire building to survive, you're going to have to develop the technology to make all those shifting materials weather at the same rate. And so it's kind of a low-key way of showing off without really being too ostentatious about it. Anyway, and with all these other technologies, one of the things that people start doing is doing things like celebrating these stories with lots of different color in plaster. And you get this kind of painting where it's painting directly on the drying plaster. Now, what's something that's important to know about this is that each of these panels are about 6 by 6 feet at least, but plaster dries really quickly. And so the person who's doing this, if you can imagine just taking one of these panels and dividing it up into 16 even spaces, and the person doing the painting would mix the plaster and paint on the wet plaster at about a rate of about a 16th of each panel per day. And because that's about how fast they could work. And so you do get areas like this that fall away. But what's important about this is it becomes a way of showing off how much money you have as a family if you're the one that paid for this, because you're kind of, again, you're low key demonstrating that you can afford to pay a master artist for several months to produce all these panels. Because again, each of these large panels will take at least 2 weeks for the artist to do. But it becomes something that reminds everybody in the community all these stories about scripture and civic responsibility and history as well. So really, really very amazing stuff. Look at some of the details on this though. I mean, these faces, this face is about 8 inches tall, and this person is putting gemstones and actual gold in. It's it's pretty amazing. And this is where people use halos a lot. This is not where the halo was invented. The Renaissance halo, yes. And this is where you get the kind of the glowing, expanding circle. Before these, halos varied quite a bit. And this kind of halo, the very round circular halo, is something that we think of today and is used in a lot of modern contemporary photography. This kind of circular, fancy, schmancy, uber fancy halo was you did not see very often before the Renaissance got into big high gear. Circular halos, yes, but not with all the fancy writing and stuff like that. It did start showing up in Byzantine times and started picking up steam, but it was not super, super popular until the Renaissance. Anyway, one of the things that the wealthy families in Italy were doing, remember, they were getting all their money from shipping and all technologies and stuff like this coming in. One of the things that they would do is pay for Greek and Roman statues to be liberated from where they had been found in like dumps and stuff like that, cleaned up, and then they would install them in their gardens, palaces, and things just to remind people how wealthy they were. Now, what's really sad is, I don't know if you know this, Roman and Greek statuary like this were fully painted. The reason why Greeks and Romans used white marble was because that supported the paint body that would be put on later, not because they thought white marble needed to be used because of its so-called purity. But the Renaissance people didn't know that, because all the wealthy families that were buying this, they didn't know the folks they were buying them from thought the decayed paint was ugly, and so they would sand it all off. But it became such a consistent misconception that art historians at this time started writing that the whiteness of the marble was the highest form of marble, because whiteness was akin to purity. And then about uh, 400 years later, 300, 400 years later, that started shifting into the vocabulary of Enlightenment era writers in the countries that started practicing slavery, which, but it's all based on a misunderstanding. White marble was prized by Greeks and Romans because you could paint on it better. Did you guys know that? It really kind of changes things. But Michelangelo didn't know that, and that's why he carved everything out of white marble. And you can just see how amazing some of the stuff are. So take some time, go through these pictures, look at these resources, and they represent just a fraction of some of the stuff we see that the Renaissance produced. Now, one of the big rock stars is Brunelleschi. Have you guys heard the term Renaissance man? A Renaissance man is a term used to describe a person who has it all together. It's a guy who is not a toxic masculine person. He's supportive, he's intelligent, he can fight, but he can also reason. The Renaissance man was somebody who knew how to dance, but it was also somebody who knew how to paint, who knew how to arm wrestle, who knew how to build a bridge, and could jump from the floor to the tabletop without a problem. That was one of the tricks that Da Vinci would do for people. He would stand on the floor and jump to a 40-inch tabletop without breaking a sweat. And one of the reasons why we associate that is because the the people whose work survives after the Renaissance are people that were the serial entrepreneurs. They had several different irons that they would keep in several different fires, always constantly going, always thinking of how they could improve, how they could be better, how they could do different things. And so you would get a person who would go and fight in the city-state wars, who knew how to ride, who knew how to do their sword play, but then they would come home, they would learn how to paint, maybe they'd learn how to sew, maybe they would design clothing for people, design furniture, and of course, Da Vinci would design everything from uh, exercise equipment all the way to siege equipment, and everything in between, and design rooms that would access hot and cold running water through plumbing, and also design face creams for people. So it's just that's where we get the idea. And why this is important for Brunelleschi is Brunelleschi was in a he was Filippo was one of these guys who was on a constant struggle, not struggle, but on a constant journey to find new ways that he could remain relevant in a world that seemed to be changing very rapidly. So he learned mathematics, he learned geometry from the works that were brought back from the Middle East after the Crusades. He learned different kinds of building techniques. He learned brick masonry. He learned plasterwork. He learned all this kind of stuff, and he turned it towards architecture. This time, you didn't have to be a licensed architect. And what he decided to do is he started telling people, I could build also, and he would say, I could build this, I could build that to anybody who would listen, until finally he was given the assignment of building at that time the world's largest dome. Now, he was not a family's architect. He didn't have a big roster of buildings that he had created or anything. This was pretty much the first um, uh, big project that he got hired to do. And what he did was amazing. And I want you guys to watch this video. We cannot watch the video on this YouTube recording. Um, but what I'm going to do is show you some spots throughout it. So this is the area that we're in, and I want you to watch this whole thing. It's less than 4 minutes, but this is where, this is the kind of architecture we're seeing. Uh, Basically, it's two-tone, where you have panels of very light material surrounded by ribbing of a very dark material. One of the reasons why this was kind of a show-off piece is if you talk to anybody who does construction, they will tell you that things of different colors like this will respond to the sun. They'll expand and contract in very different ways. And so if somebody's able to design and build stuff like this, you know that they know what they're doing. And what Filippo was asked to do was create this dome. What he actually kind of weaseled his way into convincing people he knew how to do was to create this dome for a building that was being constructed. Now, some of the problems is that this structure that it's built on is not a perfect octagon, but he needed it to make it look like it was a perfect octagon. So none of these were the same dimensions at all. But he had to make it so that these ribs met at the top and it looked consistent. And this is one of the magical things that he did. He designed a structure of brickwork so that as it was being built, it would support itself. And this is hundreds of feet off the ground. It makes me sick to my stomach. I start getting vertigo if I climb a ladder. But this guy was able to do it. He made this dome. And so he's given all these impossible parameters, build the largest dome anybody's ever seen. You have to build it so no two sides are the same shape or size. And you have to do it so it looks like it is completely consistent. And he was able to do it. And it was a perfect blend of all the things that make the Renaissance special, where he ties together um, incredible geometry, math, and awareness of technologies and building materials, all sorts of stuff. And he's able to do it so that when everything was said and done, it is still a landmark construction 700 years later. So just really amazing. So watch these two videos. It talks about geometry, and then this is that 4-minute video we just looked at where it talks about that. Now, what for the studio, what I want you to do is think about those kinds of things. You know, he's given all these parameters, basically being told to build a dome. And what I want you guys to do is build a dome. And you're not going to have to build the same dome he did. I want to show you, I have a couple different links here for you to look at. One of these is making 3 different domes. One of these is 10 different domes. I want you to look through this, brainstorm, think about different stuff, and figure out a way of making a dome, not from a kit, but see if you can find instructions, like video instructions and stuff like that that you can follow along online. And I'm going to share another website with you here too that I don't think I have written anywhere, um, just to give you ideas. And what you're going to be doing is kind of pooling these ideas, then pick one and just make a dome. 6 inches in diameter, 4 inches tall, solid construction, so you can't see through any cracks, and it must be an extrapolation of your own. No using kits. The reason I say this is that people have actually bought kits for domes and made that, doesn't count. And people have also tried to make them out of Legos. Again, doesn't count. But I want to share this website with you. This is polyhedra.net is the name of it. So it's this word, polyhedra.net. I don't think this is in the assignment page, but I'm giving it to you guys who watch the video. And you can look at this kind of stuff. What this gives you is you find something that you like. Maybe you like this shape, you click on it, and what it does is it gives you pages that you can print out and make this shape. Now, since we're doing a dome, you're only going to do half of it. And this isn't a kit. You're actually printing it out yourself and you can color it, whatever, tape it together so it looks solid. But let's say on this one, I would say this is the top and I would trim off these last two things right there. And then that's how I would make the dome. So that's one way of making the dome. So I would print this off and I would cut it, these last two trapezoids here, and cut off this. And if you follow the directions and placed it and cut it out and then taped it all together, it would make a dome for you. So that's one way of doing it. But you can do the same kind of thing. There's soccer balls shapes. There's other things like maybe you like this one, make a dome out of that. But then also in the assignment itself, one of the links takes you to this page where it shows you 10 different dome constructions. Now, these four in the back, not really interested in. They're not true domes. But this one with the different shapes like hexagons and pentagons there, this is one that I just showed you. Some of these, definitely go through, watch this video. Watch this whole video, give yourself ideas. And again, you're just making one dome and that's it. You don't have to make it all of them. And then this is another video that I linked to. And this one shows construction techniques, how to make some relatively simple domes, starting off with a circle. And look at that and you watch the video all the way through. This is about 20 minutes long, so maybe do it while you're doing something else. But this demonstrates three different ways of making domes. And some of them are easier than others. Some of them people enjoy more than others, but I want you to watch those videos. Going back to this one, this does give you a couple links in the description right down here. And it says download link of the free ebook 10 different domes of dome development. You can link to that and it will, on this particular one, it shows you that they're using a cutout printer. You don't have to do that. You can just print the thing yourself and cut it out yourself, but it shows different ways of making domes. And again, what I want you to do is watch these, get yourself some ideas, and then use some of your critical thinking to figure out a way of making a dome yourself. And I've included several different other links and stuff like that that for you to look at and result and learn about them. I'm not telling you to make a specific type of dome. What you're doing, I'm giving you a couple different things to look at so you can come up with an idea and figure out how to make your own dome. And again, the website that I shared with you, I'm going to show you that website. It's called polyhedra.net. So it's this word, polyhedra.net. And that's the website you can go to and explore. And what I want you to do before you start making your dome, go to these different links, look at the different websites, kind of get an idea of what kinds of things are possible, and then narrow in on one that you want to do. All right. Does that make sense to you guys? And what you're doing by doing that is you're going through a similar process to what Filippo Brunelleschi did, where he just had to figure out how to do it. And he looked at all right, can you guys hear me again? I'm sorry about that. It looks like the call dropped for whatever reason. Um, I'm sorry about that. But does this make sense? We're going through that kind of process. We're using our critical thinking, looking at different possibilities, and then coming up with a solution to make a dome 6 inches in diameter and 4 inches high. And that's what we're doing. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I want to show you what to submit. Let's see. And so what we're submitting to this is a photo of your dome, photos of your sketchbook, brainstorming notes, whatever you wrote down to kind of help you develop your idea. And if you found resources and stuff like that that you used, a list of links that you made, and and then I want you to write a couple sentences. One is, how much time did it take? I spent 45 minutes researching. I figured it out in about 15 minutes, and then actual construction took an hour and a half. That kind of a thing. And then one sentence about, I'm really amazed. I was able to find a lot of resources, and I think my dome it looks like a real dome. I think it's successful. So that's what you need to submit. Has everybody got that? All right.
Yes.
Yeah. What's that? Sorry, Jeremy, I every time you say something, I time myself wrong, so I end up speaking over you. I'm sorry.
No worries. I just confirming I heard you.
Okay. All right, great. Does anybody have any questions about all the stuff we covered today? Now, I know it was a whirlwind. We talked about at least 4 different modules, but and like the next 2 weeks, we're going to kind of uh, push through things pretty quickly as well. But I'm hoping, do you guys feel like we've covered it so you kind of know what to expect when you go through and look at things on your own, and go through these projects? Does it make sense to you? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good, 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 good. Anybody have any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And again, when you guys submit your attendance thing, just put a little note in there saying you attended live and you'll get extra credit. That's Paige, Nicole, Jeremy, and Susan. And for everybody, please, if you have any questions, ask them to me so I can clarify stuff. And if you don't get the points that you wanted or were hoping for, look at the note that I made and make the change and resubmit. All right? Thank you very much, guys. Be safe over the weekend and have a wonderful 4th of July. A couple of you guys said you were doing barbecues and stuff like that. I think the worst 4th of July celebration I ever had was neighborhood party, and um, we got food poisoning, the whole neighborhood. That was horrible. I am absolutely certain I know where the neighbor was living. It was their potato salad. They had dripped some nasty meat juice or something like that in the potato salad. Nobody noticed. I only had a little bit, so I didn't get so sick. But oh, it was horrible. So, um, don't get sick over the weekend. Enjoy enjoy the celebrations and be safe. All right, guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it.